You always thought you understood the signs, that you were capable of noticing when someone kept something hidden in their heart, but it never crossed your mind that it was him, so quiet, so restrained, who had hidden something like this from you. And now the revelation arrives like a wave that doesn't ask for permission. The air disappears, the body freezes, and the mind finds itself caught between shock and the strange feeling of having always known, as if there was an invisible thread trying to warn you. His love was never put into words, but it was in every detail that, because they didn't seem significant, you let slip by. The way his eyes lingered for just a second longer, the heavy silence that fell when you left. The way he found excuses to be around, but never made the reason clear. Now everything reorganizes in your memory. The pieces fit together, and it hurts to realize how much was in front of you and yet remained hidden. It hurts because along with the revelation comes the inevitable question, why hide? Perhaps out of fear, perhaps because he believed he had no place in your life. Or maybe because the intensity he felt was so great that it seemed impossible to put it into words without losing the mystery that consumed him. And you find yourself caught between two extremes, the surprise that paralyzes and the late realization that opens wounds. It's as if you discovered that an entire book was written in silence, and only now are the pages coming to light. The strangest part is that a part of you always sensed it, not through clear evidence, but through the silent vibration that filled the room when he was present. Now, with the truth exposed, you understand that this perception wasn't an illusion. It was real, but you didn't want to believe it. If this has ever happened to you, comment, "I needed to hear this." The secret of someone who loves you in silence is never just about him. It's also about you, about the way you walk through life without realizing the intensity you provoke in others. And maybe that's the hardest part to accept. You were loved in silence, unaware that you inspired that love. You realized that his silence was never empty, it was loaded. It was an almost suffocating presence, but so subtle that you couldn't name it. Now, with the truth in front of you, it feels like every moment spent with him becomes a riddle revealed too late. You wonder how many times he wanted to speak and couldn't. How many times his heart raced and he held his breath so you wouldn't notice. How many times he let slip an almost explicit gesture, only to pull back when he realized he might be seen. This kind of hidden love carries its own weight. It's not light, it's not innocent. It's a contained force, like a dammed river trembling behind the gates. And when the revelation bursts forth, the accumulated pressure leaves no air in the lungs of the one who receives it. The question echoes within you. What if you had noticed earlier? What would have changed? Would you have walked together? Or does this love exist only because it was silenced, kept as a precious secret that could never withstand the light of everyday life? The mind creates 1,000 possibilities, and each of them is like an internal cut because no answer is definitive. You can't go back in time. And it's exactly this impossibility that makes everything more painful. The cruelest part is the mix of feelings. There's gratitude for having been loved so deeply, even without knowing. There's anger at having been deprived of the truth for so long. There's also a twinge of guilt for not having noticed, for not having looked with the attention he perhaps deserved. But deep down, you understand that you couldn't have known. He worked hard to hide it. He shaped the silence, disguised the signs, built invisible walls, and still he failed, because the heart never completely falls silent. You just weren't ready to hear what had been there all along, silently beating. And now the revelation brings not just clarity, it also brings an emptiness, because realizing that someone loved you in secret is different from being able to live that love. The distance between the two worlds is almost unbearable. If this makes sense to you so far, write yes in the comments. The body feels before the mind can comprehend. That's why you feel this tightness in your chest. It's the pressure of years condensed into a single confession. It's the weight of a glance that, once revealed, can never be undone. Now, every memory becomes unbearably vivid. You revisit the conversations, the encounters, the goodbyes. You recall his expressions. You remember his silence. And everything screams, it was there all along. The truth now is not just a revealed fact, it transforms into a mirror. You realize that it's not only about what he felt, but about the way you navigate life, often unaware of the impact you have on others. It's uncomfortable to recognize this, because it requires humility. It requires facing the fact that you evoke feelings you never asked for, that you never nurtured, yet they exist nonetheless. And that awareness is heavy, because his silence shows that love is not measured by what is reciprocated, but by the intensity with which it is lived in secret. You sense something almost spiritual about this revelation, as if life had kept this secret for the exact moment when you could bear to hear it, and that time has now come, even if you don't feel ready. His heart has become a hidden altar. You were placed there unknowingly, and as strange as it may seem, there is something sacred about having been loved this way, even without ever consciously participating in that love. And the inevitable question arises, what to do with this now? Ignoring it is no longer possible. Erasing it isn't an option, and living with it doesn't seem feasible either. So what remains is to carry it. Carry the weight of having been loved in silence. Carry the responsibility of knowing that this love shaped a part of his life, even if you never gave consent. This is the point where you understand. The revelation wasn't made to bind you to the past, but to awaken you. Life shows you that there is more happening around you than you realize. And perhaps the greatest lesson is precisely this, to learn to look beyond the surface. It's hard to admit, but this perception changes everything. You no longer see encounters in the same way. You no longer walk through places with the same lightness, because now you know you might be crossing internal worlds that remain invisible until they explode before you. You understand that silence is never neutral. It always carries something. And from now on, every silence will have a different weight in your ears. If this resonates with you, comment, "I've felt that silence." The revealed secret also makes room for something unexpected. Compassion, not just for him, but for all those who love in secret. You begin to realize how humanity is made of these unspoken words, these forces that hide behind glances, small gestures, and long absences, and how much you yourself, perhaps without realizing it, have hidden something similar. This shock takes you to a deeper place, the recognition that all love, whether revealed or not, leaves marks, and that perhaps the purpose of this silent love was not to be lived out loud, but to transform who you become on the inside. You feel something inside you shift. It's as if the revelation has moved a stone out of place, and now the internal flow no longer finds the path it once did. You don't go back to being the same. Not after realizing that someone built an entire story around you without your awareness. This is the kind of experience that breaks logic, because suddenly what was ordinary gains a depth you never suspected. A simple glance, once seemingly casual, now becomes heavy with intention. An absence which used to go unnoticed now rings out like a deafening silence. It's as if life is telling you, nothing you experience is as simple as you think, and that realization hurts. But at the same time, it awakens you. It awakens you to a level of consciousness where gestures conceal entire worlds, where what remains unsaid weighs more than words, where what is repressed builds invisible narratives that, sooner or later, find a way to reveal themselves. Do you feel angry with him for hiding it? Maybe. But you also feel admiration, because keeping love in silence demands strength. It requires discipline. It requires sacrificing one's own will, in order to preserve something that in his view perhaps couldn't exist any other way. And in this contrast, compassion is born. You can't see him merely as someone who deceived you through silence. You begin to see him as someone who carried a tremendous burden, perhaps to avoid hurting you, perhaps to avoid destroying himself. And this compassion is unexpected, because it doesn't come from the mind, but from a deeper place that understands the pain even without agreeing with it. This is the moment you realize that all love has a destiny. Some are meant to be lived, others to be kept, and still others, like this one, to be revealed only when there's no turning back. And even then, each serves its purpose. What was the purpose of this secret love? To show you that you can be loved in ways that escape your control. To show you that life doesn't depend on what you see, but on what happens in invisible behind the scenes. To show you that intensity can exist even in absolute silence. If you've ever experienced something similar, share it in the comments. The spiritual impact begins to expand. You realize that it's not just an individual story, but a universal truth. The world is full of secret loves, full of confessions that are never voiced, full of lives that intertwine without ever truly touching. And suddenly, this connects you to something bigger, the human mystery of feeling too much and speaking too little. You become more sensitive, more attentive, more open to noticing the silences, not just of those around you, but also your own. And this is the point where the revelation shifts from being solely about him to being about you. You begin to walk differently, not with your feet but with your eyes. Everything around you seems laden with meaning. The people who cross your path are no longer just anonymous faces. Each one may be hiding an invisible universe, just as he did. And this thought won't leave your mind. How many secrets circulate in front of you unnoticed? The weight of this revelation is not just emotional, it's existential. Because suddenly you understand that life is never just about what is said. It also happens in silence, in what is left unchosen, in what remains trapped in someone's heart. And you feel a strange calling, to learn to read the invisible, to learn to listen beyond words, to learn to recognize when someone's silence is not absence but excess. An excess of love, an excess of pain, an excess of everything that has found no way out. This learning is not light, because it forces you to face the responsibility of being more aware, and awareness never comes without a cost. The more you perceive, the harder it is to ignore. And now there's no way to close your eyes again. His love becomes, in a way, an initiation. A passage. You didn't ask for it, you didn't seek it, but you were thrown into this process, and within you a new understanding of love is born. It doesn't need to be reciprocated to be real. It doesn't need to be lived to be profound. It simply is. And the fact that it is changes the destiny of those who feel and those who are felt. You sense that this is the point where silence becomes master, because it is through his silence that you learn what words could never teach, and maybe that's what confuses you the most. Love, when it's genuine, educates even in secret. But along with that, learning comes emptiness, because revelation doesn't fill, doesn't resolve, doesn't bring a future. It merely shows what has always been there, and at the same time removes the possibility of a fresh start. It's like looking at a dead star. The light still reaches you, but the flame that generated it no longer exists. If this passage resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to reflect on it, and you find yourself torn between gratitude and pain, between fascination and heaviness, between the desire to break free and the need to honor what you've discovered. This is the paradox. The secret is no longer a secret, but it also doesn't become a lived story. It remains suspended, like a wound that won't heal, and at the same time like a treasure that can't be stolen. And in this suspended space, something in you transforms. You begin to see yourself with new eyes. What if someone had also loved you in silence before him? What if you also held something like that, believing no one noticed? These questions are seeds. They don't bring immediate answers, but they start to germinate within you. And the feeling is that this revelation has not been the end of anything. It has been the beginning of a perception that will accompany you forever. You realize that this revelation is not just about the past. It continues to echo in the present, as if it had opened a crack in your consciousness. And no matter how hard you try, you can't close that door again. His silence, now undone, becomes a constant presence. No matter how much you try to move on, there's always a piece of your heart that remembers. You were loved in silence. And that memory is not disposable, because it stirs your very identity. Who are you, after all, in the face of someone who built a whole devotion for you without ever declaring it? This question opens up an abyss. Because deep down you understand, being loved in secret is also a form of responsibility. Responsibility because the energy of that love touched your life, even if you weren't aware of it. Responsibility because from now on, you can no longer pretend that it's easy to walk through the world without your being impacting others. And this realization begins to reshape how you see yourself. You're not just someone who walks distracted among faces. You're someone who, unknowingly, may be the center of another person's hidden universe. This can be fascinating, but it's also terrifying. And it is at this point that life holds up a deeper mirror to you. How many times have you also loved in silence? How many times did you feel but not say? How many times did you keep something inside that, if revealed, could have changed entire destinies? You begin to realize that their story is not just theirs. It intertwines with yours. It resonates in every secret you have ever carried, in every word you did not dare to speak. And suddenly you realize we are all accomplices in this silent game that life insists on imposing upon us. This acknowledgement brings pain, but it also brings clarity, because you understand that love, when true, is never lost. Even if it's not lived out loud, it leaves traces. Even if it's hidden, it shapes you, and it's impossible to go through life unscathed by this kind of energy. The revelation then transforms into an invitation to live more awake, to not waste signals, to not ignore silences that carry weight, to not believe that absence means indifference. You feel that life is asking for a new posture from you, not one of blame but one of awareness, awareness of the invisible, awareness of gestures, awareness of hearts that even in silence are shouting nearby. And this is where the transformation deepens, because from now on, you are not just moving forward, you are also moving inward, inside yourself, inside others, within the layers of silence that support the surface of life. This inner dive is not easy. It forces you to confront everything that has been repressed. It compels you to admit that on some level you always knew, because the heart always knows even when the mind refuses. You ask yourself, why now? Why has this revelation come to light at this very moment? And the answer, even without words, is clear, because you are ready. Ready not to live his love, but to understand the impact that love in any form has on you. From this moment on, nothing will go unnoticed. Not the glances that linger too long, not the silences that weigh in the air, not the gestures that seem casual, but hide intentions. You now become a reader of the invisible, an interpreter of what is not said. And this changes the way you exist. You begin to listen deeper, to see beyond the obvious, to realize that every encounter is much more complex than it appears, and this sensitivity does not fade away. If this truly touched you, comment, "I needed this awareness." His story, as singular as it is, becomes a symbol of all those who have loved without being able to say so, a symbol of all those who carry a universe within but do not find the courage to expose it. And in recognizing this, you too become part of this silent chain that connects all human souls. The revelation then is not an end. It is a beginning, the beginning of a new way to look at yourself, at others, at life itself. You realize that deep down, it is not just about romantic love. It is about the awareness that every human being carries invisible secrets, and that these secrets have the power to transform, even when they remain hidden. This awareness accompanies you like shadow and light at the same time, because from now on, every silence carries a question, and every absence brings with it the possibility of a hidden universe. But amid all this, one certainty stands out. You come out of this experience not smaller, but greater, because you were loved, because you were chosen as someone's secret altar of the heart. And even if you never took part in this decision, the fact that you were loved in this way reveals something you didn't know about yourself before. You are worthy of love, even when you don't realize it. And maybe this is the real explosion. Not the revelation itself, but the impact it leaves on you. The breathlessness you feel isn't just from the shock of the news, but from the recognition that you have a value you don't always see. And it's this value that needs to be remembered, not just by you, but by everyone who has ever felt invisible or unworthy. The truth is that somewhere, someone has loved you in silence. And that is enough to prove that you have never been empty. If this video made you think, the next one will turn you inside out. Go ahead.